Good morning. I'd like to welcome you to Napa Valley Wine Library's Winemakers Seminar. Today we've got a foot in both camps. We've got winemakers and books. The book Rock and Vine will be on sale also out afterwards during the tasting, and that's your opportunity to own a copy and get autographs from your favorite winemakers. No wine or food in here, obviously. And this venue and outreach, what we're trying to do here is new to us, so we're hoping that if you have suggestions that you'll go to our website and info@napawinelibrary.com, send us messages. We'd be happy to get your advice. The wine library was founded about 50 years ago by several of the Valley's wine families and interested other individuals and industry support, such as UC Davis. It was deemed appropriate for the little public library in St. Helena, in the heart of Napa Valley, to host a unique collection of, I'm going to pick this up so I can read it, collection of materials on wine, winemaking, viticulture, with local emphasis on original source materials. We raised the money to add the wing for our collection. The St. Helena Public Library is unique in that it is the only small-town Carnegie library which houses the Napa Valley Wine Library. And it has its own little vineyard right outside the window. Our collection is books, periodicals, manuscripts, tapes, DVDs, etc. And we've begun an earmarked fund called the Preservation Initiative to provide access and care for the collection. Your membership fees pays for all of this, and to say thank you, we invite all members to an annual tasting of wines by our Alliance wineries. This year's tasting is tomorrow at Silverado Resort and Spa in their Oak Grove from 5 to 7. 72 wineries are pouring at least 150 wines. Many of them are not generally available. There will be more information in the lobby. Today's presentation is Books and Wines. I would like to introduce Chelsea Prince, a book lover.
Let's play the video first.
Oh, okay. I have been preempted.
The real began actually after a bad bottle of day.
I had everything go wrong. Corks, bad capsules, bad glass, bad labels, every conceivable problem. I walked back in the winery. I saw one of our topping kegs. Most people don't realize that wine, when we can't fill a barrel, is actually stored in kegs in wineries all over the world. Kicked the keg and said, why can't I just put wine in one of these? Light bulb. So from there, I came up with a business plan, pitched my now partner Dan Donahoe on it, and 6 months later we started Free Flow Wines to bring fine wine on tap to customers all over the US. I think the reality is this has been done before. This isn't new. Wine on tap has been served all over Europe for hundreds of years, so it's just new to us in America. Our concept is premium wine on tap. We're taking fine wines, Paul Hobbs, Aubin Clément, Beringer, Chateau Saint Jean, great wine brands. We're putting them into stainless steel kegs, and what that does is protect and preserve the wine from oxidation, cork taint, and preserve service temperature. When you think about it, the consumer first says, ooh, that's not a bottle. I'm a little bit scared or I'm a little bit shocked by that. But as soon as they taste the wine, they get told how green it is. Every single one of these kegs takes 26 bottles out of landfills. Bottles are generally made in Mexico or China, imported in boats to the United States, and then filled with wine. Corks come from Portugal. Labels are made all over the US, but Europe as well. Foils, the foil, that little foil on top, is generally made in Spain or France. So all of these things are being shipped all over the world to make that bottle. What do you think the carbon offset is greater? One keg getting returned from 1,000 miles away, or 6 different things getting shipped from all over the world?
People love our story. You know, we've been friends since 6th and 7th grade. We've known each other forever, and we all bring our own unique kind of piece to this business. Me, I've been in the wine business with my family for my whole life. Ben has always been interested in fermentation and has grown up making his own wine as a home winemaker. And Danny went off to France and got his MBA in wine. We've all taken our own paths to get where we are.
Friendship is everything. You know, Mike, Danny, and I, the partners here, the owners, we've been friends for a very long time. And so when you come to our winery, when you drink our wines, we really want you to feel like you're a part of the family. You're one of our friends. We take this non-pretentious approach to winemaking and the wine industry, something that's very different, something that I don't think a lot of people are doing just yet. We like to have fun. We're young guys, we all just turned 30, so we're planning on doing this for the rest of our lives, and we're blessed. We're blessed to be able to work with our friends and ourselves and in this awesome community. This town has shaped not only myself, but my business partners as men and as businessmen. So we have a lot to give back to this town, and we try to do that every single day.
Ben and I's winemaking philosophy is definitely a little more French in style, that's for sure. As you go through our portfolio of wines with us, as you're tasting through them and we're explaining the wines, you'll hear us say, this is a little more Burgundian or this is a little more French in style a lot through our portfolio. As big proponents of food and wine and big foodies ourselves, we love to go out and eat good meals, and wine is such an integral key part to good food and good company during those meals. We try to craft our wines cleaner, brighter, a little more higher in acid, so they complement the food, and that's much more French in style.
I'd say my go-to involved wine is definitely the sparkling wine, primarily because bubbles give you this, I'm sophisticated but I still like to party a little bit type of attitude, and it's just, it's always a good way to start or end a conversation with some bubbles. So that's my involved go-to. Typically I'll come down to the tasting room, which I live above, and grab something that's open from that day to enjoy with dinner that night.
I knew I wanted to be a winemaker when I was about 5 years old. We had blind tastings on Sundays on our ping pong table in the basement, and although there was 20 wines, all from Napa Valley, all Cabernet from the same vintage, there were all these differences in the wine. I wasn't allowed to drink the wines, but I could smell them, and I noticed the differences in the wine, and that's when I wanted to become a winemaker. The philosophy of B&A is to make a product that over-delivers for the price. So we try to source the best available grapes, make the best available wine, and produce that at a low price that anyone can buy and anyone can drink across the U.S. B&A is actually the airport code for Nashville, and that's where we're based. We're based in Nashville. We thought it was appropriate to give ourselves a name that actually relates to where we're based. So B&A being the airport code, we thought it fit perfectly. I have two passions. Not only am I a winemaker, I also wear another hat. I'm a volunteer firefighter here in St. Helena. I've been doing that for almost 10 years now. It's been a great experience. It helps with everything else in my life. Although I sometimes have to leave in the middle of Thanksgiving Day dinner or Christmas dinner or on my daughter's birthday to help the community, and it's a good thing, and it helps my winemaking, and I think I'm a better person because of it.
Wine is an industry where people never stop learning, and I'm just getting started and I have a long way to go. But even my dad, who's worked in the industry for 30 years, still learns something new every day. Wine can be a part of a healthy lifestyle, which a lot of people don't realize. A lot of research shows that wine can be good for you and good for your health, good for your heart. I also want to keep breaking down the idea that wine is only meant for a certain type of person. You don't have to be old and rich to be able to drink wine. Anyone can drink it and enjoy it, and it's more approachable now than ever. Some of my favorite quotes from my dad are, you don't have to know everything about wine to be able to enjoy it, and wine's supposed to relieve stress, not create it. He's also taught me that we're so lucky to be doing what we do. We produce something that people love, and we make people happy. One of my favorite things is to follow a wine through the whole process. I love tasting it from the tanks in the early stages and then comparing it later on to the finished product. At Robert Viale Vineyards, we started with one wine in 1990, and today we're producing 24 different wines. 13 of them are Zinfandels, and they're sourced from vineyards all over Northern California. There probably isn't a better red wine to pair with all the cooking that's going on nowadays than Zinfandel. It goes with Asian cuisine, Moroccan, Greek, literally everything. I've hosted BLA dinners all over the country and all over the world, and it's always so interesting to see what the chefs come up with. Our wines have been paired with elk, venison, buffalo, duck, ostrich, everything.
Dark matter is a concept that my sisters and I came up with, basically talking about how we want to maintain mysteriousness but also allude to the fact that there isn't any boundaries for us. The label is a constellation of stars that basically form a skull, and for us that's our edgy side. My day job is I'm the assistant winemaker at One True Vine. I'm doing that basically all day, at least an 8-hour day, if not longer, depending on the season, whether we're bottling or harvest. And then basically my sisters and I will come home and we'll sit around, usually around the television with a glass of wine, and we'll start talking about dark matter and doing the dark matter stuff at night and on the weekends. It's Howe Mountain fruit, so it's very specific. It's late ripening. I'm usually picking right before the rains come in. This year, my sisters and I were sorting, trying to scramble to get it in before the rains. The last pallet that we actually pulled in undercover is when it started torrential downpour. During harvest, this year was an exceptional year when we actually released smack in the middle of harvest. So I had already worked, I think it was a 15-hour day, and then coming home and working with my sister on sending out order confirmations and all sorts of things. It's very hands-on. Sometimes I think we underestimate what we can actually do, but when the going gets tough, we make it happen.
Now I get to introduce Chelsea Prince, the book lover and a publisher and a modern storyteller. Her book, Rock and Vine, introduces 11 of Napa Sonoma's emerging young winemakers, and we have 5 of them here today. What makes Chelsea completely unique to me is that her other love is philanthropy, and she uses her publishing business to shed light on and provide funds for worthy causes worldwide. Some of the proceeds of this book fund Wine to Water, an international effort to provide safe drinking water and reduce waterborne illnesses. Chelsea will introduce the winemakers and moderate the discussion. At the end of the seminar, you're invited to buy a book, visit, taste, and enjoy. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. This is so great. Thank you so much for the kind introduction. I just want to welcome everyone, all the panelists. We've got 5 here this morning who are going to share their insights and answer your questions. We've got Jordan Kibblestaff from Free Flow. Coming over. Got Danny Fay from Involved Winery. It's like a basketball game where we're just using the... I got Tony Leonardini from B&A Wine Group. Got Maggie Kramick from Robert Gallery Vineyard. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of introduce ourselves, just a little bit about our history, our little story. You guys have it written in the thing. That way you guys know a little bit afterwards and all the wines that we're actually involved in. I'm Angeli Mondavi. I am 4th generation winemaker, and actually I'm obviously part of the Mondavi family. My family owns Charles Krug Winery. I am not actually affiliated with it at this point in time. Questions of whether or not I'm going to be coming back still looming. I like to keep people thinking, but I'm actually the assistant winemaker for 100 Acre One True Vine, and I actually do multiple harvests a year, actually leaving in a week to start harvest in Italy for layer cake. So that's what I do during my day job here. Now I'm representing Dark Matter Wines, which is a project that my sisters and I actually do together. And it's actually really exciting because it's a different insight as to how we envision winemaking, as well as our style, as well as our branding, which obviously you saw us go and labels a little bit different, a little bit fun, and showing people that, you know, we're not all serious, but at the same time our wine's very serious. So.
Hi, I'm Maggie Pramick. I've actually only been working in the wine industry for about 4.5 years. I started in 2009, straight out of college. I moved home to figure out what my next step was going to be in life. My dad suggested I start working in the tasting room, even though I had told him already that I was going to do my own thing. So I started working in the tasting room and I was immediately hooked. I fell in love with the wine industry. I was crazy for thinking I could stay away. So I started out in the tasting room. I was there for about 2.5 years, and now I'm working side by side with my dad doing sales and marketing. I'm the wine club manager, and this year I plan on getting dirty and hanging out on the crush pad during harvest.
I'm Tony Lardini. I'm with B&A Wine Group. We're actually, as I saw from the video, based out of Nashville. We have an office in Nashville, office in St. Helena, and we make 6 wines. We're sold 47 states, 5 countries. But I started out as a little kid breaking down boxes for my family's wine shop. I got paid $0.05 a box, and you know, they wouldn't give me a razor blade, so it was hard work. So I was, you know, cracking the boxes and flattening them out. But you know, just grew up kind of in the Napa Valley. Family has vineyard, winery here, also Whitehall Lane, and once again, no affiliation there. Maybe someday. But as a kid, high school kid, I used to go in the vineyard, and I would sneak pick grapes. I'd get a bucket, like a big garbage can from the hardware store, and I'd make my own hooch, and it worked. So all the high school kids loved me. You know, like, this doesn't taste good, but does the job. So you know, kind of progressed, and you know, just started making bigger and bigger lots of wine. And I always kind of considered myself a home winemaker, and then, you know, I had a brand take off, and I went from a home winemaker to, you know, an industrial winemaker, and really had a huge learning curve. And I think it, you know, I made some mistakes, but learned a lot. Enjoy the business, and thanks for having me here.
Hello, everybody. My name is Danny Fay with Involve Winery. I grew up in the town of Sonoma. As you can see, I have business partners, Mike and Ben, who are also some childhood friends. We grew up together. Mike's dad actually hit me in the face with a baseball during batting practice of Little League, and was so apologetic, kept inviting me over, and all of a sudden I'm best friends with Mike. Grew up not really using the premium vineyards as you know, grape growing, amazing grape growing areas, more party venues. I wasn't really interested in the wine industry at all until I got into college. I started making wine in 2005 at Kenwood Vineyards, and was doing a marketing and viticulture degree at Cal Poly at the time. Went off and did some other interesting adventures, and was laid off during the recession. Came back in 2009 to work for $12 an hour in the taste room at Benzinger, the same place that I had been shuttling cars and getting into trouble in my adolescent years, and fell in love with wine again. Was able to save up enough money to go and study an MBA in wine in Bordeaux, and it was also affiliated with UC Davis, University of South Australia in Adelaide, and Wine Intelligence in London. So I was able to kind of bounce around those countries, make wine in New Zealand and Australia and France, and really dedicate my life for 2 years while living out of a backpack and learned as much as possible about wine. Since then I came back and have built the Involve brand and another brand called Epilogue with Mike and Ben, from about 400 cases to 6,000 over the last 4 years, primarily Sonoma grown, organically grown fruit. So we have a lot of fun. We have a taste room downtown that's also a big part of our story, and we've brought on each a younger sister into the winery, which has also added another dynamic element of challenges and whatnot. But yeah, primarily focused on organically farmed Sonoma fruit, and looking forward to chatting today.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Jordan with Free Flow Wines and Kibblestadt Cellars. I, unlike everyone to my right, have absolutely no family history in the wine business whatsoever. I'm a convert. I actually wanted to go to medical school for about as long as I can remember being a kid. And after college, I went and worked for a consulting company in the pharma and biotech space, and spent 2.5 years slave labor in a cubicle, which for those of you that have to do that, I'm sorry. It was pretty miserable. And after burning out, I moved back to California. I'm originally from San Francisco. And like Danny, took my first job in the wine industry up at Copain in Santa Rosa for $12 an hour, scrubbing tanks and learning how to operate a forklift. And then all my friends in iBanking and consulting were laughing when I text them pictures of me driving a forklift, and they text me back at some business meeting in a suit. And so since then, I started in the premium winemaking world, bounced all over the world, making wine in Argentina, Chile, Australia, and the US. And then in 2009, I had this crazy idea to start putting wine in kegs and launched that. So 4 years later, we took an idea that most of my friends told me we were crazy to do into the #1 trend in wine here in the US, the National Restaurant Association named Wine on Tap, the #1 trend in wine in 2013. We have 150 wineries we work with, and 30,000 kegs and growing all over the United States filled with awesome premium wines. To keep my hands in the winemaking, I still have a great little brand as well called Kibblestat Cellars. So I sucked my family into the wine business instead of coming up that way. And so now we have a family brand. It's about 2,000 cases a year that we distribute in 5 markets around the US, and keeps me making wine and being happy. So looking forward to chatting with everybody today.
Great. So as you can see, we have a very diverse group, people from the area, people not from the area, people who grew up in the business, people who didn't. We're going to continue talking just for a minute about these panelists and then their brands. Mentorship is a really important part of business in general. And I'd love to hear from each one of you just about how mentorship plays a role in either your winemaking style or your business, and what mentors you might have.
Can anyone hear me if I don't use the microphone? It's a pretty small room.
I think we don't have to pass down the microphone either.
Yep. Is that cool? Can people in the back hear? Okay. All right. Awesome. So I'm really lucky. Free Flow has an amazing group of investors behind it. Some of the visionaries in our industry, guys like Jeff O'Neill, who started Golden State Vintners, which is the largest bulk wine company in California, and sold it a number of years ago. Guys like Bill Price that own Kistler, the Durrell Vineyard. So, being a young guy and getting into the wine business and going aggressively after it, it was great to have people who've been in the business 10, 20, 30 years and could give me advice, make introductions, do all of that. And on the winemaking side, the same thing. I studied most of my time as an assistant winemaker under a guy named Kenneth Uhas. He's a really well-known Pinot Noir winemaker and a good friend of mine now. And the guy who first told me I was crazy for putting wine in kegs, but I like to make fun of him for that now. And so it's really important, having these people who you can learn from, who don't have the pretension, who aren't looking down at you, but instead propping you up and encouraging you, is really, really wonderful. And there are so many in this industry. This industry is full of families go back generations. So getting to know those people, interacting with them and working with them, and being open and listening. Not taking the youthful approach of I know more than you, but instead having the respect to say, what can I learn from you? Makes a huge difference, and I think helps build a lot of success.
Yeah, I think Jordan touched on it. This is a very unique industry. My father is an engineer who recently had an interview with Apple. And when you talk about the technology industry, everyone's so secretive, it's closed doors, no one wants to share anything. And I had the fortunate experience to go out into the world with a passion and a positive attitude. And for 2 years, I dedicated myself to learn from some of the world's most innovative and well-known leaders: Michel Rolland, Francois Louton, Nicolas Joly, James Milton down in New Zealand. All these guys, they opened the door for me and for other young, innovative and entrepreneur wine industry leaders. And I think for me, it started back in Cal Poly. The late Keith Patterson, who actually was just named Wine Industry Person of the Year. He was probably the most enthusiastic and passionate wine industry person I've ever met, and he really was the fuel behind Cal Poly's wine program, and he took so many students from having a small amount of interest in wine to just having an absolute love for it. So Dr. Patterson, his work and his
passion really kind of transcended down on a lot of students I know that have come out of the Cal Poly school.
I think I'll agree with these guys also. You know, I'm pretty lucky to be in this business, to grow up around it, and just so many people who are helpful and who open doors for you and give you advice if you're not asking for it. And I don't know, it's kind of special. You and he got my first tasting book, and I was like 17 years old, and he like taught me how to taste, to spit, don't drink it, and respect wine. And then another one was Dean Sylvester, winemaker, Whitehall Lane, great guy. I'll never forget, it was cleaning some tanks, and I knew I had done a bad job and cleaning a tank, and I was, maybe hungover or something, I don't know, but, there was like this little tiny tartrate, left, and he called me in, and he was, you got to be clean, this is unacceptable, and, it kind of hit, and, he was just a really good mentor, and I'm lucky enough, too, to have a brother-in-law, Dave Finney from Orange Swift, made a wine called The Prisoner, probably heard of it, and he's just been so helpful in so many ways, and just, thinking different, and, really market-driven, so I really appreciate those people just opening the doors and opening up my head to new things.
I've got to go with what these guys have been saying. This industry is so unique. Everybody is so kind and so willing to share ideas. Like I said earlier, I haven't been involved in the industry as long as these guys. But my experience so far has just been so incredible. Everyone that I meet is always inviting me over, telling me to come spend a day with them, follow them around, whether it's doing vineyard visits or, following someone around in the barrel room. And then, of course, my dad, who's right up there. My dad and his business partner, Bob Bialy, have just been so wonderful, taking me around and just teaching me everything they know. I wish that I had started paying attention when I was a little younger. I was stubborn and I was determined to stay away and create my own path. I thought I was going to be in New York at this point in my life, but my dad has just been so willing to take me under his wing and teach me everything he knows.
So I started in the industry at 10 years old, definitely not making $12 an hour. I'm a little bit jealous, actually.
I was 24, just.
Yeah. And what was really interesting is my grandfather's been a huge inspiration. He's 98, 99, still goes to work every day, and watching him grow up, as I was growing up, and him being so passionate about the industry, and really, taking us out into the vineyards and talking to us, my sister's here as well, having that luxury of having someone that's so knowledgeable and was at the forefront, back in the day in the 40s, with cold fermentation and bringing in oak barrels and talking about, the prices back then versus what they are now. He's really been an inspiration, but I also have to give credit to some other individuals as well. Robert Mann, who's a winemaker at Cape Michael in Margaret River, Australia, one of the best, and he's only 10 years older than me, but he really knows a lot and really opened my eyes. It was the first time I had actually had amazing Grand Crus, 1982 Bordeaux, and really opened and enlightened me to this whole other side of the industry that I really never saw, and I think that's what really invigorated me of wanting to kind of expand my horizons. So we stayed in Australia for a little bit, worked under some other phenomenal winemakers. I started under the mentorship of Jason Woodbridge, who owns 100 Acre, and I've been with him pretty much since then. Having those minds that think outside the box, honestly, are what is really changing the industry, and I think that's what makes us all unique. Is we're all really thinking outside the box and something a little bit different, even though our ancestors have kind of done some things, and it's us bringing that edge in and having those mentors has definitely helped. So,
Angelina. So what about your winemaking style with dark matter makes it different?
So my sisters and I make However, we only have my sisters and I only own 2 acres, so it's really small. It's usually an hour pick with the guys that we have, and it's very, very quick. However, when we first start, it goes through, we do everything that anyone else does, but I do ferment in pungent. So it's basically an open barrel, and it's really hands-on. So I'm manually punching down that fruit, and then we decide when to actually press the wine. And once that happens, it stays in barrel for 4 years, and 100% new French oak. Most people are itchy and wanting to get their wine sold within 2 years. However, the way that the wine is made, it really handles the oak really well and can maintain being in oak for 4 years.
Actually, this might be for everyone. So there's, of course, the tradition of Napa, the tradition of Sonoma, but then you have to continue to innovate. You're going to remain an industry, and a strong industry, especially when there's such a globalized market now. What is really the line between tradition and innovation, and how do your brands address that? For example, like Napa Valley, there's so much tradition behind that. Maybe you can speak to that. What is that tradition, and then how do you continue to go forward?
Yeah, well, we built our brand on making wines from old historic vineyards throughout Napa and Sonoma. We consider ourselves part winemakers and part preservationists in that we really do strive to keep these old vineyards that were planted in the late 1800s, early 1900s in the ground. That's not to say that we don't also use new vineyards. We're constantly replanting Zinfandel and Petit Syrah. But we love the history behind the old vines. We love the stories. We have so many families behind these old vineyards whose stories we love to tell. We put their family history on the back of the label. And that's really what we strive to do.
And Tony, maybe you can answer the question too, because you are actually now putting your wine in kegs, but then you also have tradition as well. So what do you think of maybe how your brand is approaching tradition and innovation?
It's a really good question, and I think some part of this is a lot of what we don't talk about, and there's this whole world of the wine industry that's kind of never discussed, and I kind of learned it kind of fast. But the tradition is to make wine in barrel, and you get it from the old vineyard, and we had sourcing issues for one of our wines, so I had to travel all over the state and started sourcing grapes from Mendocino, Clarksburg, Lodi, Monterey, Sonoma, Solano, and people don't use barrels. You go to wineries and it's a tank farm, and it is what it is. So we were like, how do you oak the wine? Well, you use modern winemaking techniques, and so we still make a lot of wine in barrel, and that's the tradition. But to make large amounts of wine, there's other routes. So it's kind of conflicting to me a bit. But barrels are great vessels to store wine, make wine. But there's loss. It's wood. It's hard to clean. And in tanks, you don't have any evaporation. Angels share, and it's stainless steel and it's clean. So it's definitely a conflict for me. And
the large company is, a lot of it is that.
Exactly.
But there's a lot of innovation happening right now, especially with the group that we have. And we can definitely read about that. What is, Danny, do you have a preference for a particular appellation? Do you think you guys will stick with Sonoma wines?
Well, I mean,
and what makes the Sonoma vineyard so unique and attractive to you guys? And can you speak maybe about your biodynamic vineyards and what that looks like?
well, I mean, Sonoma's always kind of been the younger, better-looking sibling than Napa. But in all honesty, we have a fun rivalry. Growing up in Sonoma, the only reason we came over here was to bowl. That's bowling alley, we didn't. I think there's a lot of respect that goes both ways throughout the valleys. We are very proud to be from Sonoma. And a lot of people, you know, they obviously know about Napa. I mean, I think Angelina's family, Robert Mondavi, did one of the greatest marketing portrays ever for a valley, and put Napa on the world-class map with its quality wines. And Sonoma's always been, you know, kind of in the shadow. And being from Sonoma, we certainly like to pick grapes from Sonoma. And Sonoma is much, it's a little bit more diverse. You know, we've got from Alexander Valley and Dry Creek all the way down to Carneros, Sonoma Coast, Sonoma Mountain. I mean, we've got tons of little microclimates in this county. So with Involve, we try to source particular varietals that seem to do well in particular climates and AVAs. So Russian River Pinot, Carneros Chardonnay, Cabs and Cab Francs from Dry Creek and Alexander Valley. And we try to do that to showcase what Sonoma has to offer. And we also farm organically and biodynamically with a lot of our vineyards, primarily with the hope that these farming practices will allow us to have relationships with these vineyards for a, you know, knock on wood, 3 to 4 decades. This isn't, you know, just a flash in the pan. This is a passion that we have and involved. That as young winemakers, we want to invest in the soils and the vines that are going to be able to, you know, stand the test of time with us. And we found that farming organically, biodynamically, allows the soils to be a lot healthier for a longer time.
And Tony, what's your inspiration for your winemaking style?
That's a great question. There's a style I like, I think, and then the style I make. It's kind of a funny story, but one of our most popular wines is called Butternut, and I've gotten some Sonoma Coast grapes, and was really excited. I wanted to make this big, buttery, oaky Chardonnay. And I was going to, you know, pick it, harvest it, and then bottle it 8 months later. Well, kind of like a year went by. I was sitting in brand new French oak barrels. VA was through the roof. It didn't finish fermenting, and it was a total disaster. And I was, you know, pretty disappointed. So I was going to do like a one-off, find, you know, sell it at a low price, find someone who wanted to buy it, and you know, but I'm like, it's got a Sonoma Coast appellation on it, and I thought it tasted okay, and I tried people on it, they didn't like it, and I'm trying to find a name for it, and I'm just, you know, it was like kind of a down time for me, I was pretty bummed, and I'd invested all this money and time, and it didn't taste good, you know, and so I'm just trying to find a name, and my wife walked in the door with the River Dogs organic box of produce, and in it was a butternut squash. And she picked it out, and I'm like, ooh, that would be, you know, this is an oaky, buttery, you know, VA wine. Like, that's perfect. So, I roll the computer, you know, butternut Chardonnay, and I'm checking all these names for anything related. Well, nothing pops up. I'm like, no one's ever come up with a name called butternut Chardonnay. So, you know, call up some friends in different places, and they're like, you can never sell a wine that tastes like this and call it butternut. And like, thank you, everyone, you know. And so I found 2 people that would take it, and one guy was in Sacramento, another guy in Nashville, Tennessee, and they bottled it, shipped it out. The guy sent it to Nashville. He's like, I'm not gonna be able to sell this at any price. This is, you know, this wine's unacceptable. The label. Well, 2 weeks later, within a couple of days, the guy in Sacramento calls, the guy in Nashville calls, and they wanted butternut Chardonnay. They wanted more of it, and I was like, what happened? So now I had to duplicate my mistake. So, that's where it got really difficult. But, you know, that's.
And now it's what the #1 selling wine for you guys. Right?
It's #1 selling, and it keeps growing, and it's pretty funny. So some people laugh at me because I'm trying to add VA to wine. I'm like, yeah, how can I find VA? And then you know, and as it grows too, you know, you got to keep it as consistent as possible. So that's been the majority of the times.
And Maggie, at Bialy, what style do the wines there? What do you guys try to portray?
That kind of, well, when I talk about it, it also kind of touches on your question about innovation. We're taking a unique approach to Zinfandel and how we make our Zinfandels. We're making it in the Burgundian style. So whereas Angelina's keeping her wine, and you said all American oak, right? French. Oh, you said French oak? Okay, so we are too, but we're only using about 25% new oak. And then we're fermenting our wines in open top stainless steel fermenters where we're punching it down 3 times a day, and then putting it in neutral French oak barrels, and we're only aging them for about 9 to 11 months. What was your question?
I'm glad you came with that previous question. All right, we got that. We got that in. What's the what sort of style do you try for? Like big and bold, or?
Well, with Zinfandel and our Zinfandels, they're big, bold zins, but we really try to find balance. And what we really strive for is just to show off the vineyard. So like I said earlier, we're sourcing our fruit from different vineyards all over Napa and Sonoma. And most of those vineyards are made into their own single bottling. And so with each wine we make, we're really trying just to tell the story of the vineyard and the family behind it. We use as little manipulation as possible.
Jordan?
Right, talk about innovation. Let's see, go ahead.
So, what's the difference? What's the line between innovation and tradition? No, I'd love for you to just talk, we saw a little bit about it in the video, but where did the concept come from? What's your take on alternative packaging, and particularly kegs?
Sure. It's funny, we're in an industry that for hundreds of years has thought the best way to serve wine is put it in a glass bottle and stuff dead tree bark in it. I mean, if I came to you today and said, okay, so I've got this great new package. It's really unsustainable, it's made from melted sand, and I want you to put your really expensive, high-quality product in it, stuff it with this dead tree bark that fails 7% of the time to preserve your product and leads to unbelievable variability in your product, and it's really expensive. Wouldn't you be like, oh my God, I would put my wine in that in a heartbeat? The reality is, part of the fun thing about being the next generation in the wine industry is we have great vineyards, we have great wines, we have all these great stories. How do we continue to innovate and change this industry so that consumers get the best product possible and that we're doing something positive for the environment? And when you look at everyone here, it's funny, I was thinking about when we were going back to this industry, one of the things that's innovative but not innovative is the fact that we all get to know each other, and this is such a collegial industry. Literally, Angelina and I met 7.5 years ago. Yeah, we met 7 years ago in Australia. While she was making wine at Cape Mental, I was at Bass Felix a half a mile away, and we were partying together at a town of 2,000 people at night during harvest. Danny's partners, I met 6 years ago working at a wine bar while they were starting NVWLA, and I was starting at that time what is now Kibblestadt Cellars. It's this funny, that part of the industry, but what we're always looking to do is do something different, something better. So why kegs? Well, we as winemakers spend so much time and energy making the perfect bottle of wine. From working in the vineyards to oak aging for 4 years. Can you imagine the love and craft that goes into that? And then you put it in a bottle, and it goes to a restaurant, and they open it, and they pour one glass, and then they sit on the back bar, and then they serve it the next day. And now that wine, she spent 5 years putting her blood, sweat, and tears into, tastes not like it should, because some bartender forgot to seal it, close it, and pour through all of it the night before. And now a consumer who may be tasting it for the first time doesn't get an accurate portrayal of what that wine should taste like. So why kegs? It perfectly preserves the wine. What it's going to allow it to do is never oxidize, never change. So the wine we put into the keg tastes exactly when it comes out like we put it in. So as a consumer, you're getting a perfect glass of wine every time. Now this isn't for all wines. You can't have 82 Bordeaux in a keg, though I've been asked. I'm like, how would I do that? The company started in 2009. I can't put 82 Bordeaux in a keg. But the reality is, for a certain tier of wines, and for the wines we consume when we're out to drink, at restaurants and hotels all over the country, kegs make a lot of sense. And then there's a huge environmental piece to this. As you saw, all those corks, bottles, caps, and spoils, all that coming from all over the world and getting packaged, and then people don't know this, only 27% of wine bottles that go in recycling bins ever actually get recycled. The rest of them all go in landfills. We're talking about tens of thousands of tons of trash every year. My company alone, Free Flow, this year will take thousands of tons of trash out of landfills this year. We'll put over 1.2 million bottles will just get sucked out of the system thanks to what we're doing in Free Flow. So there's a huge environmental sustainability aspect to what we're doing as well. So I think when we think about innovation in this space, the consumer is changing. The American wine consumer is enjoying wine more as part of their daily routine. We're having a bottle of wine on the dinner table instead of a hopefully a 2-liter of Coke. It's one of my big missions is to replace soda with wine. For everyone who's allowed to drink it. But the reality is we're seeing a changing demographic. They're looking for new ways to drink wine, whether it's a screw cap, a zork, a bag, whatever it is. There's lots of innovation out there. And while not every one is right for every wine, there's a niche for all the different types of wines, and there will still always be bottles. There's the tradition of romance, and honestly, the bottle's great for wines that are age-worthy. My signature wine in Kibblestadt has to go in bottle because I like to lay it down for 5 to 10 years before I drink it. That slow oxidation helps it mature. So I think innovation wears lots of hats in the wine industry, but the consumer has to be open to trying new things, and we're seeing more and more consumers willing to try new things. And so kegs are one piece of innovation. Going back to an older Burgundian style or an old French style, lower alcohol, less oak. Another stylistic change I would consider innovations. There's a lot happening out there. And I think as long as you all, as consumers, are willing to try new things and keep an open mind, we'll continue to see some really exciting innovation in the space. And you guys will get to try cool new wines, new formats all the time.
Awesome. And so there are some challenges, though, to getting the kegs, sort of ever-present across the United States. What are some challenges that you come across, and how have you sort of jumped over those hurdles?
Well, first of all, I need all over. Yeah, Florida. I love Florida. Florida, Utah. Yeah, Florida. You know how people have trigger words that make them just cringe? Florida's one of my trigger words. It's like I go, ugh. So, Florida was really interesting. As many of you may know, it's the second or third largest, actually I should say third or fourth largest wine market in the country. California's #1, New York's #2, and Texas and Florida jockey for 3 and 4. Kegs were illegal in Florida due to some Prohibition-era legislation. Limited, completely arbitrarily, the size of the container sold in the state to 1 gallon. Why? I have no idea, because you could buy 7 1-gallon containers and drink just as much wine. But it was there, so I got to do what has been one of the most unique experiences in my life, which was hiring a lobbyist. I always thought that was a dirty word. And Slater is awesome. I've learned to really appreciate this gentleman. In fact, he was just out here last weekend, and I had dinner with he and his wife. And we hired a lobbyist, and we went after changing the #1 to the #6. Never in my life, and now I have an appreciation for how ineffective Washington is. I'm not going to get political on everybody. But trying to literally change the most inane law to have a huge economic impact, environmental impact, everything else. I had to fly to Tallahassee, Florida, also awesome, 4 times. Glad hand a bunch of lawmakers. Literally, I did 18 appointments in one day, and then cocktails and dinner in one night, just doing, wine on tap is awesome. And then sitting there actually watching, you know, C-SPAN network that none of us ever watched, but we flip through it every time you see like the boring debate going on between some guy and a bunch of legislators you could care less about. Glued to that, mesmerized, going, please don't screw up my thing, please don't screw up my thing. Anyway, at the end of the day, we amazingly, in less than 6 months, got our legislation through both the House and the Senate, and some signed by the governor on June 21st, and as of July 1st, wine on tap is legal in the state of Florida. So government does work. But no, I mean, the reality is that whenever you're doing something new and innovative in any industry, you're going to run into roadblocks. You're going to run into consumers that don't get it. Why? Whoa, kegs, yikes, I want a bottle. There's always going to be those pieces out there. So the big thing for us is getting people excited about it, and for you all, when you're out there, talk about it, ask about innovation. Talk to when you go visit vineyards or wineries. Ask the question, hey, what cool thing are you guys doing? Everybody's doing something innovative. Some may be stretching it a little bit. Some, like me, going way off the deep end or off the reservation. But there's a lot of innovation out there. Just ask about it.
So Danny, so you guys have been able to reach out to millennials in a very interesting way through television and media, which is a channel that really has not been tapped for such an industry that's so social. The media and through your tasting room and all that sort of thing. Will you address sort of what the millennial mindset is right now and how your brand is reaching out to them and bringing in new drinkers, new wine drinkers?
So millennials, kind of a word that we're starting to get more in tune with. There's 66 million of us. Some of us are not even 21 yet, but we're kind of the next baby boom generation. We had a little bit of a gap in the Generation X. We only had about 45 million of you guys. But we are drinking a lot of wine, and we're drinking it a lot younger than the baby boomers were. And we're also a hell of a lot less loyal to brands. You know, our parents up here, you know, they all had Tide in their laundry room. They all were listening to the Rolling Stones and Beatles, and they all had brands that they attached themselves to. Our generation is a lot different than that, and we are a lot more adventurous with wines that we're starting to consume at a young age. We're not afraid to go out of our way and try to screw up the word Gewürztraminer when we're trying to order it at a restaurant in front of our date. We're not trying to, you know, we're not afraid to go out and buy a Viognier and take it to a party without tasting it, just to be able to try it with our friends. And that's really spinning the wine industry quite a bit. It's turning things like Moscato into popular varietals that, you know, were once just sweet gallon jugs are now in nice packaged bottles, and they're serving for $25 a bottle in retail stores. So you've got this wave of millennials that are drinking more, drinking earlier. We're really enjoying the fact that we can pair wines with food, and we're going out of our way to become more knowledgeable. We're not using things like WSET classes to gain more knowledge. We're using things like the internet, Facebook, all of these innovative ways of technology, even mobile apps that we can download on our phone now, where we take a picture of a bottle and it tells us all about the history. We love using innovative ways to learn more, and we're drinking a lot of wine. So it's really exciting to see the millennials getting involved in the wine industry. It makes, I think, all of us up here very excited about, you know, being able to build more brands and, you know, drink more wines from kegs. And at the end of the day, I think it's going to be fantastic to see this generation explore more and get more involved in the wine industry. We're also doing a lot more, we're getting a lot more interested in visiting wine countries, and Sonoma, Napa, even Mendocino. You know, we're going off the beaten path. Much as I love the traffic on 29 down Napa, people are starting to go up, you know, mountain roads and into the windy back roads of the Russian River, and that's exciting too, because it allows more small guys, more brands to be able to bring people to their tasting room and build, you know, unique, authentic relationships as well.
How are we doing?
I'd actually like to ask you just to tell us about sort of the impetus for the book and how you got the whole game together.
Oh, absolutely. This is a good game. I'm pretty lucky. Everyone said yes. Well, I actually got the inspiration. I've always been interested in multi-generational issues. I've traveled to multiple countries for seminars, particularly in philanthropy, on how one generation can pass information on to the next, how one generation influences, you know, what the differences are and what can happen between generations, and that's been a lifelong interest of mine. It's actually, you know, what's strange is that just a general interest, it actually was spawned by, I had a conversation with the former president of Ireland back when I was 12, and she said, "You are the generation for change." And I said, okay, you know, what can I do? And so that sort of sparked my whole interest in generation and change, which are both in the title of the book. What's interesting as a publisher, and a storyteller, is finding the ultimate story. Wine to me is the ultimate story, because it has really three stories in every story. There's the story of the land, which, you know, people have been talking about, the vineyard. There's the story of the winemaker, and then there's the story of, you know, your story with the wine. You know, your favorite wine probably isn't the most expensive wine. It's probably something that you had with, you know, friends or on vacation, or, you know, just a great experience, a great story. And to me, the sort of intersection between the storytelling of the vineyards and what's happening, and really what's happening worldwide, is a generational change, which is just exemplified in the wine industry, particularly because it's so family-oriented. And so, I mean, I'm looking for, actually, and then also having my own company as an entrepreneur, those three things come together, and I'm looking for, you know, what's next for the wine industry? Who are those people who are not only just making a difference now, but who are going to make a difference in the industry and going to continue to make an influence as leaders, as innovators, you know, as just good thinkers. And did my research. Everyone has had personal recommendations for, you know, to be in the book. Everyone may not know who recommended them, actually. But people outside the industry, people inside the industry. I worked with Christy Canterbury, who's Master of Wine for this book, and I worked with several other Masters of Wine to get sort of the high-level opinions on, you know, in their takes on what really makes change in an industry, and what, you know, also how do you hold on to tradition, because this is such a tradition based industry with, you know, you learn so much from your past on the land and the, you know, how to make wine. So it was really all of that together. It was a lot of personal recommendations, a lot of people. It's a people industry, so everyone has something to say about someone. So just putting that all together and coming up with a list of, you know, only 11 people or 11 brands, and it's a very diverse. As you can see, it's a diverse panel, and the rest of the people in the book are diverse. You have, you know, very cult wineries where, you know, nobody can visit at all in a year, and then you have the big wineries like VNA Wine Group, and you have the, you know, men and women, and you have just wanted to get a diversity of backgrounds and ways that, you know, Jordan, who's, you know, doing something completely different and really changing the way that we think about wine. So that's the long answer. Do you want to keep asking questions? Okay.
Do you want to keep asking questions?
I do want to keep asking. That's my job. So where do you see Maggie, where do you see yourself 10 years from now?
Hopefully drinking really good champagne. I'll probably still be at Bioli. Like I said, I'm just getting started. There's so much to learn. Even my dad, who's been in the industry for, 30 years now, Dad, 4 years? Sorry not to date you, but yeah, he's still learning something every day too. Just being a part of this group of people and learning about, you know, the whole kegging world is totally new to me. But yeah, I'd like to still be working for my family, selling our family label.
And Helena, where do you see yourself?
Oh gosh, I've been dabbling with some consulting, so I ultimately see myself back with the family business. I'm working for Charles Creek Winery as hopefully the director of winemaking. There's too many chiefs in the kitchen right now, but I'll get there eventually. But you know, also, you know, maintaining our brand, my sisters and our brand, Dark Matter Wines, and really developing that. That's not going to be going away, and we're definitely not backing down. We're only getting stronger. So ultimately, really kind of seeing that, but I would also like to eventually take on some more clients as well, because I don't have enough to do already. It's just something fun for me. I love it. I love the challenge, and yeah, that's really where I see myself in the next 10 years.
Great. And back to your vineyards, you were talking about how you have just a, you know, small. You were talking about your harvest and how you have just a small plot of land. But what does? I mean, it is actually quite diverse in its plot. So what does your land? How does that affect your wines? And maybe talk about the different parts of the land.
Yeah, sure. So we have three different sections. We have a front section, a front block, and then we have a side block that's a little bit more shaded, and then the back block. All three are different clones of Zinfandel. The front block is actually nestled with some lavender, and the aromatics, I think, really pick up in the wine, which is really unique. We keep running into this joke about our mom wanting to kind of cut them down, and I keep telling her don't, because I really think that it imparts some flavors, but it makes it look beautiful as well. But the front block is very red soil. The back block is very rocky, and within this little 2-acre area, there's different flavor components that I get from all three of the blocks. which makes it actually really unique and really different. And I pick them usually not all at the same time. Sometimes I'll pick the front block a little bit earlier than the back 2 blocks just because of the sun exposure. And sometimes this year it kind of looks like it's still a little bit early. However, Bray's on the way it's kind of going is the side block looks like it will actually get picked earlier than the front block this year, just because we've had a couple of trees kind of go down, and one's just in neighboring, and it's kind of opened up some light. So some of the side block that usually is the last that gets picked looks like it'll be first. So it's, from year to year, it kind of varies and it changes, but it's definitely really interesting. It's fun, and every year it's a new challenge. So.
And so you guys work with old vines. What is so special about working with old vines and versus new vines?
Well, like I said before, we love the history behind the vineyards, and we really, there are so many interesting people behind these old vineyards, and there's so much passion to keep these old vines in the ground. It's our passion too. So the Viale family planted their first grapes in Napa in the 1920s, and we still have those vines today that we use to make a Zinfandel that we call Aldos. And people just fall in love with the stories. And something that I really love about making so many different wines is that everybody has their favorite wine. So we make 13 different Zinfandels, but everyone has their favorite. And a lot of people, kind of latch onto a wine because of the story behind it. And it's really special to us to be able to keep that tradition going.
Tony. So Tony actually has a wine out that transcends state boundaries between Oregon and California. Will you talk a little bit about the decision for that wine, and are you going to continue doing the Oregon California wine?
We'll see, but we have a wine called Bandwagon Pinot Noir, and we've been doing it for a few years, and it was single source in Monterey, single vineyard, and in 2011 in Monterey, they got crushed by frost, really bad frost, but this area in particular, we lost about 75% of that vineyard to frost. So I learned a lot from that incident that you kind of, if you have this wine you want to grow and expand, you also have to get multiple vineyards, and multiple appellations, so this happens again, you just don't get hit so hard. So we were short on 11, we had people wanting the wine. I was actually at Anna's Cantina, my local watering hole, and where I was telling someone about my problem, a friend, I was like, I'm just, short wine, and I'm getting pressure from the sales guys because they have demand, what do I do? And he's like, they had a fairly decent harvest in 11 in Willamette. I have a buddy who was trying to sell some old wine, trying to sell some barrels. Would you ever think about, mixing California and Oregon? I'm like, not a bad idea. And an excuse to go up to Willamette, haven't been there in a while, so went up there, tried the barrels. I'm like, this is pretty good. And I bring some samples home, went home, mixed the two together, and I'm like, this is gonna work. So, I kind of made the mistake too early of mixing them together without getting label approval. And so the TTB, as you guys all know, they're like Florida.
Oh,
the trigger word is awesome. It's a trigger word. And now that I know how they work, and we've done, we've had label projects with them, several, you've had a lot more, but we sent in for label approval, and we got a consultant to help us, and the consultant's like, this is what you need to put on the label. And we submit it, well, they reject it. So, and they wouldn't say why. And we're trying to get someone on the phone, and we send it back in, they reject it again. We're like, we need some help here. And they're like, well, we don't know what you can put on there. So I'm like, well, that's very helpful. So finally they got someone back and they said, you have to put, because it's more Oregon than California, it has to say Oregon, California. You can't have no mention of Willamette on there. You can have no mention of Monterey on there, but Oregon needs to be first, California second. It was a great learning lesson for me. There's two types of kind of Pinot people out there. I mean, there's more than two types, but there's definitely a difference between the Oregon Pinot drinkers and the California Pinot drinkers. And we put the two together, and it worked in some markets, didn't work in others. It sold out, but it was a tough sell. So I don't think we'll do it again. Yeah.
We're not mix them.
Yeah.
So, Steve, question?
Can we ask questions?
Absolutely. I'm just going to open it up. It is now open.
I have two questions for Angelina. One is,
experience you've had in working and picking and making wine in other countries, are Napa and Sonoma rare with microclimates, or is that like it is in the rest of the world?
No, you know what, it really is. It's throughout the world. So just to be clear, layer cake is made in Argentina, Australia, Spain, Italy, and here in the United States. I deal with all those countries. I live in Argentina for about 3 months a year. Italy, this will be the first time I'm going to Italy, so I really get to see that. Spain I kind of deal with over the phone because they pretty much have it down tap. And my boss, we split regions, so wherever we're kind of needed most, we'll actually go to, just depending on how large the harvest is. Dealing with contracts, Jason and I actually do all the contracting ourselves. And what we do, when we're in those areas, we go and visit the vineyards, it's quite a spread. In Argentina, I can travel up to 3 hours in car. Hopefully I don't get lost. And listening to GPS doesn't always work well in the mountains, so I've learned. And you know, all those regions are, you know, what makes it unique and different. So I want to say it is, you know, it's definitely global. I mean, you're going to have all these little microclimates. It's just you have to be open and aware when you go to those areas that there are different, you know, microclimates. So you just have to kind of know what you're trying to make and the target market that you're really trying to go for. And that kind of determines, you know, what regions and what areas you're going to actually go to.
And the other question is, I was talking to a fellow at Burgage Hills yesterday, and he was proudly showing a French, you call it a barrel, but I would call it maybe a cask, 620 gallons, and saying that to barrel the wine made it too intense of wood, and so to keep it in these big casks for 4 to 5 years made it a better experience for the wine. You were saying that you aged your Zinfandel for 4 years in
59-gallon barrels.
And how do you feel about that?
Oh, you know what? I think that's, honestly, as a winemaker, I think that's really just a preference. It really is a preference. Regardless, we're using new French oak, so we're always getting that oak influence in it. So, you know, it depends on whether or not, you know, they use neutral oak. Really to see, you know, sometimes they use it for, you know, oxygen regression. You know, over a 5-year span, like these guys were saying, you know, you're going to have a little bit of loss of wine, you're going to have a little bit of loss of water as well, you know, and all that sort of stuff. And it just kind of mimics the aging process and brings the aging process a little bit more into it. It really just depends on, you know, on your opinion. Right.
All right, yes. Jordan, I was curious if you found that if quality comes into question when people think of wines and kegs, and if you see any demographic trends of where the younger demographic is more open to keg wine versus older, or not really?
Sure. So one thing we're very cognizant of is how we talk about it for that very reason. So whenever you hear me talking about it, word keg rarely gets used. I'm always saying premium wine on tap or wine on tap. So the vernacular is really critical to consumers' first impression of wine on tap. So we're very cognizant when we train sales reps, when we train the bartenders and the servers in restaurants. This is premium wine on tap, from the barrel at the winery to the barrel under the bar. And so the way we talk about it helps change that. The way we train our staff talking about that freshness from the first glass to the last glass. But when you talk to consumers, yes, there's definitely a more ready acceptance among younger consumers than consumers that have had experiences with wine for 20, 30, 40 years in the bottle, that are tied to the tradition of the bottle. But what I found is, it's funny, I was just saying this to a friend the other day, I did a tasting across a very large demographic spread, I had taps there. And people were coming up and just so mesmerized by it. Is that wine? Yeah. I was doing actually Sunset Celebration Weekend, which was down in Palo Alto. You guys all familiar with Sunset Magazine? They do this big kickoff, and they stuck me as the only winery in all the beers. So they had all the wines, this really pretty tent, and it was beautiful, and everyone's doing, they're talking about their vineyards, and it's elegant, and then I'm with the beers on the main alley, where it's a bunch of people tasting IPAs, and people go, oh, that's wine? And they get really excited. Wait, and it's in a keg? I think that the consumer is excited again by that innovative piece, and so it's about the education piece of it with all the people that experience it, because if you say there, you want some keg wine? People are like, ooh, keg wine? But if you say, you want some wine on tap, let me tell you about these great vineyards we work with. I mean, when you talk about our clients, as I said, we have about 150 wineries that we work with. I'm putting Paul Hobbs, Au Bon Clément, up to the Beringers and the St. Jeans like I talked about, but we've got BNA Wine Group, we're gonna have their cake soon, where we have great brands all across the spectrum that are doing this. So I think the consumer, when they see a brand they recognize, does become instantaneously more comfortable with it. You know, if you've been drinking Paul Hobbs or you've been drinking butternut for a long time and you love it and you see butternut on tap, the chances you will try it and be open to it are much greater than if you saw Joe's brand on tap and you're like, who's Joe's brand? I've never seen this before. So I think those pieces all help the consumer get involved and experience it. Once they do, they tend to love it.
So, kind of keeping on the wine on tap concept here, you keep talking about in restaurant and that kind of more commercialized setting. Are you looking at bringing that to the home consumer very soon?
I get that question all the time. In fact, I had to install taps into my lobbyist's garage as part of the deal. So we are exploring it. The issue is that there's 26 bottles in a keg, and the consumer will sit on the keg for a very, very long time. If I told you you could have wine in your house that never ever went bad, and you could have a glass or a half glass anytime you wanted, I mean, I don't think anyone in this room would say, oh no, I don't want that. Everybody would put a tap in the next day. So we're working through some smaller package items, potentially going back to a recyclable model as opposed to a returnable model, but we're not sure yet. One of the cool things we're seeing around the country is innovation in growlers. So Whole Foods has growlers in 14 locations. We're talking to another major supermarket chain about rolling out growlers. Yeah, anyone here familiar with what a growler is? No. Okay, for those that aren't familiar, a growler is a refillable container. You see them mostly at breweries. You go to the breweries, that big brown jug with the Grolsch top. Well, breweries have been doing this for years in brew pubs. Why can't we do it with wine? So Oregon just legalized it. Another one of our clients really pushed that legal change in Oregon. It's legal in about 30 states in the United States to actually do a refillable wine container. So to your point, I'd actually rather have it set up in your local liquor store or supermarket where you come in, you buy an assortment of growlers, take them home, bring them back. That has that whole reusable, no trash model. So I think that's where we're going to see the future for consumers more than a keg in your house.
Absolutely, you guys.
I was interested in going back to the point about alcohol levels. There's been a lot of discussion for the last 5 to 10 years about wines getting too alcoholic, wines needing to reduce alcohol, the techniques for doing that. My bias is to the fruit-forward, large red wines. How do you balance getting that nice, fresh, big fruit with alcohol that's implicit? Anybody can take that.
Well, I think the biggest thing on that is to start with the federal laws on alcohol. I think that has the biggest effect on everything. There's the tax break between anything above 14 and anything below 14. And I know from our standpoint, if we're at 14.1, we're de-alking. We're going to bring that down to 13.99999 and save tens of thousands of dollars. And I think that's a big hit there. And I think if the tax laws changed, I think you might have different style wines, but also de-alcoholing sometimes concentrates the wine and brings some fruit forward. And I think just back to the federal laws and taxation on different alcohol levels really affects, you know, once you're over 14, game on, go to 17, you know, so.
Does it involve a preference on low alcohol wines versus alcohol?
Yeah, I mean, so Mike and Ben are more of the day-to-day winemakers. I come in during harvest and put in my 2 cents, but they are certainly more acid-driven wines that probably have more of a 13. Our Sauvignon Blanc that we're pouring today is 13.6. We try to make wines that are very food-friendly, and I think when you start to explore in higher alcohols, you know, it kind of gets a little overpowering, and when you have a little bit more acidity and the lower alcohol, it can get more preferable to pair with food. I know some Zinfandels down the road or down the table here. It's a lot more challenging for you guys to pick glass than Napa to probably get alcohols down.
Yeah, for dark water wines, because we're only teenagers, we don't really have the luxury of being able to, if I were to de-out, I would lose half of the product. You lose usually approximately, for every 200 gallons that you put in, you usually lose about 20 gallons. So that's not really an option for us, but also, if I were to pick the Zin that we had a little bit earlier, the flavors just aren't quite there. The balance just isn't there. Zinfandel for me, is a funny grape. I deal with all varieties, but the Zinfandel and Pinot Noir, depending on when you pick it, sometimes the acid and pH balance just is a little bit funky, and sometimes it just doesn't come together. So, from a winemaker's perspective, I really find that, what I like and, what I know and what I've tasted and what works tends to be more towards where I kind of go as far as picking. And then, whatever the alcohol is, it's whatever it is. And I try not to worry my sisters too much about it. They haven't really said anything. The goal is to throw it in front of my grandfather, who's 98, who's a huge advocate of low alcohol wines. And if he gives the thumbs up, hey, my day's been made. So.
I want to jump into it. All depends on the style. I make a rosé here from California that's 12.9 alcohol. You've got to figure out what the goal of the wine is. At this point, it's let the vineyard speak and let the wine speak. So sometimes you're gonna need to make a 14.9 wine. That's just the vintage, the vineyard, whatever it is. This vineyard up in Lake County, I can make a 12.9 rosé, and it makes a spectacular wine. It's the style I'm going for. So really, it's all about balance. You said it best. Everyone here's it's the B word. My wife makes fun of me for it all the time because I use it a lot across lots of things in life. But in winemaking, it is so essential. Fruit, acid, alcohol, all these things play into a wine. And if you can balance them, you can have a high alcohol wine, but it's got to be balanced with the right amount of acid, right amount of fruit and structure and tannin. Same with low alcohol wine. So I think you're seeing definitely a shift towards lower alcohol wines in the industry in general, but it's also because I like to have a bottle of wine with a friend at lunch, and I got to go back to work afterwards. So if I'm drinking a 16% alcohol wine at lunch with a friend, I'm not nearly as effective at work afterwards as I am if I have a 12.5 rosé or Sauvignon Blanc and can get back to it. So I think, as a winemaker, we all just strive to make the best wine, and alcohol is just one of the components that makes wine great.
Any more questions? Can we have each of you tell us what wine we're going to go out and be drinking? Just tell us a little bit about it.
I have one more question.
You talking all about innovation, it makes me think about one of kind of the archaic systems in the wine business. You mentioned the F word. And the laws and regulations, but to me it seems like there's also kind of this impediment to the consumer, which is the three-tier distribution system. And so I just wanted to see, Jordan, I'm sure you guys have had a lot of experience in, how do you get the kegs through the Southern Wines and Spirits distribution system. But I'm just curious of what you guys are seeing, or what you say of like, God, I wish this would happen, or here's the future, what you see.
So I never got a chance to answer the question of where do I see myself in 10 years. One of my goals is to. Does anyone here work for a distributor? That's my PR person telling me to be careful. The reality is that there need to be some changes in the way consumers have access to alcohol in this country. For small family brands, and even for big growing brands, we need a way to access consumers that's not through the three-tier system that exists today. I'm not saying the three-tier system should go away in its entirety by any stretch of the imagination. Distributors play an active role in helping us market and distribute wines within their various states. But most of the alcohol laws were written in Prohibition era and in a very different time with a different level of infrastructure behind it. And I think as we look to the next 20 years in the wine industry, we're going to see some radical changes, aided mostly by technology, that are going to allow consumers to access wine in a totally different way. And where I see myself after Free Flow is definitely being a very active participant in the way consumers get access to wine, whether it's a restaurant, a consumer, a hotel, anybody else. And I think that that's really where we as the industry are going. It's where we want to go. And I think everyone's ready. It's a huge undertaking. Just like we're going to find wine distributors who've never touched a keg in their life and saying, not only do you have to take this thing in, charge a deposit, or what? You have to get it back to us. And the distributors go, I don't know what to do. I've never picked anything up in my life. So it's this dynamic shift, but you're going to see it change over time as everything in this industry continues to progress and innovate. So I think there's really an interesting opportunity there. The question is just going to be how to do it the right way, not force something that isn't right for the industry.
For the smaller groups, we do a lot of direct to consumer, so you can purchase online, and what we've learned is all of the backlogs that kind of come. You have to have certain licenses to be able to do that, to be able to go into certain states. We do an event in Washington, and that forces us to actually work with a distributor, which we, ultimately we really don't want to do. We want to be able to give it to whomever, but laws, say, well, we can only buy, it's going to take some time. It's like, trying to turn the Titanic, in a split second. It's not going to be that quick. So, definitely in the next 20 years, I think we're going to see some changes.
Well, one thing that's really unfair, you've all been into a restaurant or a retail store and you've seen the Coca-Cola branded refrigerator. Coca-Cola can provide that to the retailer at absolutely no cost. We're in the alcohol business, and because of those prohibition-era laws, we can't even give them a corkscrew half the time, let alone a refrigerator to brand our product. So these are the kind of things that really are unfair, especially for small producers, because there are creative ways for large producers to get around some of those legislative blocks, but we don't have the opportunity to do that as small producers. So it only makes sense that you've got to innovate some of these things and change the way you go to market.
And I think that, to think from Jordan's point, the guys that are succeeding right now in the three-tier system are the 800-pound gorillas out there. They're, we're kind of, and I think this is why Chelsea's book is such coming out at an awesome time, is because we're going through a lot of changes in the generations of the wine industry right now. Sonoma and Napa really became commercialized in the 70s, and a lot of those founders are either unfortunately passed on or passing down the wineries to their generation, and sometimes that younger generation doesn't want to take on the challenges, so an 800-pound gorilla goes in and buys them up. And what that does is it makes them a lot stronger. The smaller guys have a lot more challenges to get in front of the distribution team. I was just in Michigan this whole last week trying to sell wine, and a lot of these sales reps thought we were three sisters from Napa, and we're three friends, that are dudes from Sonoma. The challenges of that story, it's like going through that telephone game, where you tell the distributor, they tell their district manager, they tell the sales rep, they tell the restaurant, and then by the time it reaches the consumer, it's a completely different story. And the challenges out there are really based on the laws, like Jordan said, that are so outdated, and change will indeed to happen very soon.
I want to plug the next issue of the members of the Napa Valley Wine Library Association's magazine, which is the report, in which I interviewed Michael Willett of VinTap. And what Jordan does is amazing, and here in Napa Valley, VinTap will, different from you and posing a challenge, take over the actual kegging of the wine for a winery. Whereas, therefore the wines are unique and are blends that VinTap provides and saucy names that they come up with for brew pubs or for restaurants or for resorts. There are a lot of different ways to keg wine, and yours is where you do the actual blending, or the winery. You have to help
The differentiation there? Sure.
Yeah.
So there are a couple of other people in the wine on tap space. What Free Flow does is allow producers to put their wine in kegs and market them under their own brands anywhere in the country. So whether it's B&A, whether it's Layer Keg, Involve, Yali, we say if you want to put your wine in keg and sell it in the market through the three-tier distribution system, we actually package it for you. We have a 22,000 square foot production facility, and actually the first automated kegging line in the Americas dedicated for wine, only the second one ever commissioned in the world. We're allowing 150 different wineries right now, with a waiting list of over 100 more, to get their wine into kegging in the market in 43 different states. What Michael's doing is great. He's out there creating custom blends. So he's working with cool wineries and saying, hey, I've got a restaurant here that wants a really awesome Zin-based blend. Let's you and me work together to make a Zin-based blend for that restaurant. What we're doing is saying, you know, Bialy, if you want to put your wine in keg, we'll put your wine, your brand, you sell it through your 3-tier system or direct if you so choose. And I think each of them provides merits to the industry. But for us, it's all about the sustainability aspect. One thing that Michael and I disagree on is he decided to go to a disposable package out of market. And I believe that using a reusable package is absolutely essential to this industry as we grow. It's about removing waste from the system. And what's incredible is a stainless steel keg reduces the carbon footprint of putting that wine in glass by 96%. 96% over its life. Every keg we commission, remember we have 30,000 right now, is like taking a car off the road for 2.5 years. So I think as this thing continues to grow, there will be lots of different options out there for how the world sees wine on tap. We at Free Flow are really big in great brands, great wines, and stainless steel reusable kegs. Those are kind of our core tenets to what we do. But as I said, it's a big industry. There's a lot of people doing cool, innovative things. And as long as more consumers are getting great wine out of a tap, I'm a happy guy.
I want to say something real quick too, sorry. If you get an empty keg, you can buy it in a lot of places. And if your friend has a barrel, you probably someone knows someone with wine. There's pretty much an adapter you can get. You can put the barrel up in the air, use gravity, fill up the keg. You can buy all the fittings and you can build your own system at home. You can change it up every day, once a week, go to parties with it. So I've been putting wine in keg now for years, and it's been fun. And talking about bringing it home, we were talking about it earlier. It's pretty fun. Like I said, it's interchangeable, and it's easy. And we're setting it up at our house now. We're going to put a refrigerator in the garage, run a tap inside the house, and you just, like I said, you have wine, there's different size, and and the carbon footprint, from just grabbing wine from a tank before bottling or after it's been cross-flow filtered, it's just a great solution. And
So Tony, where do you see yourself 10 years from now?
That's a great question. I think just kind of doing the same thing. I'm really enjoying what I'm doing right now, and just growing brands and brand building. So, just fun. The whole, great conversation. I did jump in on the 3-tier system, and it's very archaic, and just dealing with every state's laws are so different. And Georgia, for example, they want to know every single relative and what they did. You got to go in and get live scanned, fingerprinted by the FBI. It's so, I know, bad. So we can't sell wine in Georgia. But my list of family members was 20 people long, and their addresses and phone numbers, and it's goofy. It is so goofy, and it needs a change. And for the small person, it's hard. If you want to sell wine, let's put it this way: if you want to sell wine to, let's call it ABC Wine Shop, and they're in every state, you can't get, they won't even accept your wine because you can't, get the paperwork done in the states. Some states want $250. Some states want fingerprints. It's just endless, and it's a really sad thing. And to see the mom and pop shop kind of going away and these big chains taking over, it really hurts the small guy. And the big major 5 wine companies are 800-pound gorillas. So it's kind of sad. And I think it's our job to change it. So.
And Tony has a new wine out. What's your new wine?
It's called Nana's Shortcake. And so I grew up that was my favorite dessert, shortcake. And it was like a 100-year-old shortbread recipe. I would take the strawberries, my mom would make the whipped cream. So I got to make a Zinfandel and do it. So it was pretty fun. It was a good project. So it's actually Old Vines In. So going back to older vineyards, it's Old Vines In. And it's going to be a problem we are going to run into is growing this brand is finding Old Vines In. But we've come to the conclusion, we can only find X amount, then we're only going to Old Vine grapes, and we're only going to make, X amount of
Very cool. Congratulations. Danny, what's next for you? Where do you see yourself in years?
Well, we have Envolve, which is about 5,000 cases. We launched another brand called Epilogue about a year and a half ago, which is more kind of an everyday price point. That's not a lot of fun to hang out on the retail shelf at $11.99. A lot of competition in there. But we have a new brand called Evoke coming out, where we take our top 2 barrels of Pinot Noir and our top 2 barrels of Cabernet, and we actually trade one of the barrels with one of our winemaking mentors. And it's kind of a fun way of being able to kind of bridge the gap between the generations that we're learning from. And we're only doing about 50 cases of each this year. That's a fun project. I would really like to get into education and teaching. I'm starting to teach a little bit up at the JC in Santa Rosa, and trying to sit down with Ray Johnson of the wine program over at Sonoma State. I think that my passion, other than running wineries and making wine, is educating the next generation, and being able to pass on that knowledge. And it'd be a pleasure to be able to help build a world-class program at Sonoma State, and really have people come here from all over the world and learn how to market and understand the wine economics, because there's so many dynamics from the growing side. You can make the best wine in the world, but it's still, all these guys can tell you, it's a challenge to sell it. And you have to understand all facets of the business. So I'd really like to get into teaching and educating the next generation too.
Excellent. Well, everyone brought one wine today. Would you share what wine you'll be pouring outside?
I didn't bring one.
Well,
sorry. Tony and I will be sharing. I should have brought some of my own wines, and I apologize I didn't.
but actually, we just mentioned Jordan has a new brand out.
Right, so I just launched a new brand called Kibblestad Cellars. It'll be about 2,000 cases this year, and it's the heritage brand for me. It's going back to making great single vineyard, terroir-driven wines. So my family are growers now. They've transitioned thanks to me doing this. I think wine industry is really fun. Come on, let's go. And we work with about 4 vineyards, and we make some really, really cool wines. So as I said, a lot of low alcohol, high acid, food friendly wines, but I didn't bring any today. I should have.
I didn't catch that name. You said it so fast.
Kibblestad Cellars, my last name.
Okay. And then the rosé. What was it? 12.9 rosé.
So that is called the Family Secret. No, that was a lie. It's called Twice Removed. So brand new. I don't even have it right. It's called Twice Removed. Each of our wines has a unique name and story to it, a reason why we created that wine. So Twice Removed is a single vineyard rosé of Mourvedre. It's full cluster pick from a vineyard in Lake County. It hits at about 12.9. Beautiful Bandol style. Doing that 100% Mourvedre whole cluster pressed rosé is really unique to the way we make rosé here in the U.S. Only about a dozen wineries in the U.S. actually pick grapes specifically to make rosé, and I think the wine's really fun and really gorgeous, and it's been really well received.
And where can we get that?
In order to order it, I would say through our website, but our website isn't up for another week. So
you guys are all insiders.
Yeah, you guys are a little ahead of the curve.
You're insiders.
There's about a half dozen restaurants in San Francisco that have it now, and retail shops. So the best way is just email me.
And you can meet everyone outside again. So
I'll hand out cards and
thank you.
it's brand new. We're still we're getting to push out, but thanks for asking.
Stay on top of it.
Anyway, I'll let Tony tell you about the wines we're pouring on tap.
Okay. Tony, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, so we're pouring 2 wines. We have our butternut Chardonnay with grapes coming from all over California, Mendocino, Clarksburg, Lodi, Napa, a big chunk in Monterey, and it's technically over 100% new French oak. So people ask, how do you do that? So we put the way it happened. We put the wine on 100% new French oak. We tasted through it. They said it wasn't enough. So we pulled it off, and we put part of it on 100% new French oak, blended up together. But I think the biggest thing that we found is pairing Chardonnay with the right type of oak. There's thousands of different types of oak or styles, and just pairing our style of Chardonnay with the right type of oak. So I don't think you'll find it too oaky. So that's the one wine, and then the other wine is our Napa Valley Rural Cabernet. Grapes from all over Napa Valley, and custom crush at Valentine Vineyards. We have about 60-70% new French oak, the rest neutral oak, and about 18-20 months. And then we actually, what we do is with all
all our brands is we put them through a crossflow and we pull off a 550-gallon tote or two 550-gallon totes, and then we deliver them to Jordan. So we take them to Jordan, they're filtered, ready to roll. Jordan kegs them up, and then off to the world to consume. So,
Danny, what did you bring?
I'm going to be sharing one of the most unique Sauvignon Blancs you've probably ever indulged in. It is organically farmed in Kenwood in Napa Valley, and we blend about 8% Muscat Canelli into it. And we pick it a little early, about 21.5 bricks to try to lock in the acidity, and then the fruit from the Muscat really allows the acidity to kind of lift up and pop a lot of pink grapefruit, mandarin. As you guys probably are well aware, 2012 was an incredible vintage. We are very excited about it, and the guy that we farm it with, he's 93 years old, and so cool. You take some fruit.
Yeah, we take 4 tons with Gibbelstead as well at the same vineyard.
And this guy is awesome. He is soul to the earth. He's as witty and sharp as a tack. He's out there every day. He's got a little cane now, but he goes and bombs his ATV around barking orders with his cane in the air. His name's George McLeod, and he's one of, another, talking about mentors, he's another guy who I put on the list. He started this project called Indian Springs Ranch when he was about 60 years old, and it was his retirement project. And 32 years later, it's now a full-fledged 50-acre ranch with his family, and he's the guy, he's one of the founders. He would go and chat to Bob Cundy when he was around and said, Bob, how do I grow Sauvignon Blanc? And Bob would pour a tumbler of scotch at 9 a.m. and say, all right, here's the goal. You got to make happy grapes. And of course, George, being who he was, I'm like, how do you do that? And so it's been a great process to be able to build relationships with these kind of farmers and families that have helped build the winemaking and wine growing region of Sonoma Valley. We take a lot of pride in working with him. So I'm very excited about sharing that today with you guys.
I have to tell a quick story. When I first met George, when we started working with the vineyard, I pulled up, got out of my car, and he's there on his ATV, and I said, George, nice to finally meet you. He says, nice to meet you too, Jordan. Let me show you your block. I go, great. And he just takes off on his ATV. And I'm running after this guy, going like, come on, slow down, please slow down. And I'm literally chasing him up through the vineyard on his ATV as I'm running behind it. And he didn't even blink an eye. We get up there, and I'm sweating the block. He's like, here's your block. Could I get a ride back, please? Anyway, really great guy. And it's an amazing, amazing property.
Maggie, what did you bring?
Well, so for as much as I would have loved to bring all 13 Zinfandels with me today, I chose one of my favorites. It's called Stagecoach. The name is from the name of the vineyard. Stagecoach lot is at about 1,500 feet in elevation. The vineyard was a really cool project for us. We actually took the clippings from our Aldo's vineyard, the vineyard that was planted in 1920, and we grafted them up there. So it's our own little Zinfandel project up there. I was actually kicking myself. I didn't bring an old vines in, but it still has a lot of history. And it was really, it was a special project for us because we got to take those clippings from our original vineyard and plant them up at that high of elevation. This is actually its debut today because it is not yet released. We're going to be releasing it at the end of the month, so I'm very interested to see what you guys all think. It was made the same way we made the other Zins. We kept it in neutral French oak, well, 25% new French oak, but for about 11 months. And I'm excited to see what you guys think.
Great, we're all excited. Angelina, what did you
I brought the 2007, our current release, Howell Mountain Zinfandel. Dark Matter, my sister will be helping for. We are actually almost sold out, so if you want it, tell us now, literally.
They're done when you closing the doors? The 15th?
The 15th of August, but we might not even make it to that. The sold out sign might be coming up. We have some awesome projects that my sisters and I are doing. We'll be debuting on the cover, hopefully the cover, but an editorial page on GED Magazine, Gastronomique, and Vogue, in addition to some amazing accomplishments that have just come out of the woodworks relatively soon. Which I can't actually disclose yet. So if you guys do want it and love it, I highly recommend buying it now because once we're sold out, we literally don't have any left, except for what we have in the library, which isn't very much because we only make 120 cases. So.
All right, so we're ready to run out there.
So anyway, thank you so much, everyone, for coming. We'll see you outside. And